All right, in this lesson, we're working with exponents that have negative bases. And this falls under the standard for North Carolina 8 EE1. EE stands for expressions and equations. So we're going to start working with expressions, and then we're going to start solving equations pretty soon. And the code for this one is ZQC. Excuse me. So let's look at a regular everyday exponent to start with, just as a review. So if I have, for example, the number 6, and I raise that to the power of 2, that's the same as 6 times 6, which is 36. Now, this is the base. 6 is the base. And then 2 is the exponent. So what it means by negative bases, for example, is you may have something like negative 2 squared. Now, one thing I want to point out that a lot of people get confused about is the fact that negative 2 squared, written as I've written it here, is different than if I put negative 2 in parentheses. Because if you'll remember the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, parentheses come first. These don't really count because we can't do anything inside of it, but exponents come next. So in this case right here, this is negative 2 squared. So it's negative 2 times 2, which is negative 4. However, in the second example, this is negative 2 squared. So notice the pause in the way I say it. So this is really negative 2 times negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Those are completely different answers. And if you type these in the calculator this way, the calculator is going to do exactly what you ask it to do. If you type it in like this right here, you're going to get negative 4 because it's going to do the exponent first, which is correct. It's not doing anything wrong. But if you type it in with the parentheses and the exponent on the outside where it goes, you'll get the correct answer. So you notice also that I put these in parentheses out here. Parentheses are not a finite resource. You can use as many as you want and you'll never run out. So use them, especially if you have negative numbers in an equation or anything, use them. But don't use them if you're not supposed to. For example, in this one right here, if we were to put this in parentheses, we would be changing the problem, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to do this one by hand just to show you, but you're welcome to use a calculator, and I'll show you how to do that on the last one. Squared is pretty easy. There's a key for the square, but to get other exponents, there's one extra step. All right, so negative 3 to the third power is the same as negative 3 times 3 times 3, which is negative 27. Okay, so that's what evaluate means. It means just do the math. You're not solving for anything. There are no unknowns. You're just working out the problems. That's what evaluate means. All right, now this one's tricky. I picked this one on purpose because you've probably never seen anything raised to the 0 power. Now, in a few lessons, we're going to talk about dividing numbers with exponents, and I'm going to show you some math shortcuts. Well, they're not really shortcuts. I'm going to show you the properties of exponents that make doing the math a lot easier. For example, if I had 4 to the third over 4 squared, I can simplify that down. I can look at that and tell you the answer is 4 without doing any other math. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a few lessons. But what does that have to do with the 0? Well, if I have 4 squared over 4 squared, that's the same as 1. Anything over itself is 1. Well, if you notice, these two exponents are the same. When we get to the lesson on dividing with exponents, this will make more sense. But they're going to basically cancel out. You're going to subtract. You have 2 squared up here. You have 4 squared up here. And you have 4 squared on the bottom. Those squareds, as long as the bases are the same, those squareds are going to cancel out. So you're going to be left with 1. So write this down somewhere so that you don't forget it. Any number raised to the 0 power of 0, is 1. Okay? Except, of course, for 0, because you can't divide by 0, and none of this up here works. But that's a whole different can of worms. We're not going to worry about that right this minute. So just keep in mind, anything to the 0 power is 1. All right, again, evaluate. Notice the parentheses this time are around the number. And you're going to see something in a minute you're going to have a question about. So to the 3rd power, this means negative 10 times negative 10 times negative 10. All right, so we'll do this one step at a time so we don't get confused. Negative 10 times negative 10, and negative times a negative is a positive. 10 times 10 is 100. So that's 100. Still times the last negative 10. And then 100, positive 100 times a negative 10 is going to be negative 1,000. But wait a minute, Mr. Mike. You said that if it was in parentheses, it shouldn't come out negative. Well, if the exponent is even, you're going to have an even number of negatives. If the exponent is odd, you're going to have an odd number of negatives. So when it's inside the parentheses, you could still get a negative if you have an odd number, because these two negatives will cancel out. You're left with this negative, and a positive times a negative is a negative. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. All right, so just type this in the calculator. Okay? Type this in the calculator. You would type it in exactly the way it looks. So you're going to type in parentheses, negative 10, end parentheses, and then on the TI-8384s, just above the division key, there's a little key that looks like this. It's called a caret. You type that in, and depending on your version of calculator, it may write it like this. Once you do that, it may move up and let you type in the box, or it may not. But either way, even on a computer, even on a computer keyboard, you would use this symbol right here. On a computer keyboard, it's Shift 6. But on your TI-83 calculator, it is just above the division key and below the clear key. So there's a clear key, there's this key, and then there's the division key. So that's the key you want to use. And then when you type that in, you should get your answer.